Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, D.C., where the state of our union is contentious. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, sensing a possible pending loss in Iowa to Texas Senator Ted Cruz, is launching broadside after broadside against the Texan. One of the chief attacks, questioning whether Cruz, who was born in Canada to an American mother, is constitutionally eligible to be president. Trump doubled down on this attack last night in Iowa.
He's talking about natural-born citizen, right? Now, if he ever got the nomination, you know the Democrats are going to bring a major suit. He was born in Canada. Whether we like it, don't like it, he lived there, he was born in Canada.
Cruz calls this attack nonsense, and the campaign has even released Cruz's mother's birth certificate. Sound familiar? We sat down for a Sunday exclusive with Senator Ted Cruz on his bus tour through the state of Iowa. His latest polling there, shows Cruz leading Trump 27% to 23% in the Hawkeye State. On board his campaign bus, I asked Cruz about Trump's many attacks. Senator Cruz, thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Well, it's good to be with you.
So you're getting a lot of flack from your opponents. I just have to say, Donald Trump in the last few weeks has gone after you in one way or another about your faith, suggesting you're in the pocket of big oil, questioning whether you're constitutionally eligible. I understand your strategy of not wanting to engage in what you call the silly season, but are you ever worried that by not responding, some people might feel like you're afraid of Trump?
Well, look, let's be clear. This has been my approach with regard to everybody.
Well, you and Rubio go back and forth sometimes.
Listen, Marco and I have had some disputes on policy, and in particular something like the Gang of Eight, which was a major battle, and we disagreed on substantive policy. So I'm glad to engage on the substance there. But from the beginning of this campaign, whenever anyone has thrown rocks, has thrown insults, I have not engaged, I have not reciprocated. And I don't intend to, and that's the way I've treated Donald, it's the way I've treated every other candidate, and it's the way I intend to approach it. And the reason, Jake, I think most Americans, they couldn't care less about a bunch of politicians bickering like school children.
Well, they care if you're constitutionally eligible, right? I mean, that's something you get asked about that.
But the substance of the issue is clear and straightforward. As a legal matter, the Constitution and federal law are clear that the child of a U.S. citizen born abroad is a natural-born citizen. And the dynamic that's happening, it was interesting. 3 weeks ago, almost every Republican candidate was attacking Donald Trump. Today, almost every Republican candidate is attacking me. And that kind of suggests maybe something has changed in the race.
Well, you're leading in Iowa, for one, and second in the polls nationally. Carly Fiorina saying the other day that she says it's odd that it wasn't until 2014 that you renounced your dual citizenship, your citizenship with Canada. Now, I know you say you didn't even know about it until the Dallas Morning News wrote the story, I think, in 2013. Did you ever go back after that Dallas Morning News story and try to find out more about your parents' time in Canada, whether they did did they vote in Canada when they were there? No, they did not?
My mother didn't, because she was a U.S. citizen. And my mother, look, the internet has all sorts of fevered swamp theories, but the facts are simple. My mom was born in Wilmington, Delaware. She was an American citizen by birth. She's been an American citizen all 81 years of her life. She's never been a citizen of any other place. And so the law is simple and straightforward. And it's actually come up a bunch of times in our nation's history. So John McCain was born in Panama, but he was a U.S. citizen because his parents were citizens.
And he was born on a U.S. military base.
Well, George Romney, Mitt's dad, who ran for president in 1968, was born in Mexico when his parents were Mormon missionaries. But he was a U.S. citizen because his parents were citizens. And actually, Barry Goldwater was born in Arizona, but before Arizona was a state, when it was just a territory. And again, his parents were citizens. So as a legal matter, this question's straightforward. What it's really designed to do, listen, what the American people are focused on are the real problems facing this country.
Sure.
We've had, in the last 2 days, last night, we had 2 terrorists arrested, one in California, one in my hometown of Houston. They both came as Iraqi refugees, using the same vetting that President Obama wants us to trust with Syrian refugees. And then today we saw a Philadelphia police officer shot multiple times by a man who's apparently pledged his allegiance to ISIS. The American people are looking for who's ready to be commander-in-chief, who's got the experience, who's got the judgment, the seriousness of purpose, the clarity of vision, the strength of resolve to keep this country safe and defeat our enemies. And in my view, any candidates, or for that matter, folks in the press who want to go down rabbit trails and circus sideshows are distracting from the real issues the American people are focused on. How do we keep America safe? How do we bring back jobs? How do we protect our constitutional rights? That's what I'm focusing on.
Let's talk about one of those issues, immigration.
Yeah.
That's a big issue, an issue where you just a few minutes ago differentiated yourself from Marco Rubio. It's an issue where you and Donald Trump differentiate yourselves from the pack in many ways. You both say you want to deport the 11 to 12 million undocumented immigrants in this country. Now, Trump has said that he will have a deportation force that will go door to door and round people up and get rid of them. You haven't really been clear, as far as I can tell, as to how you're going to get all these people out of the country. How will you get them out?
Well, actually, Jake, I've been very, very clear. There's an 11-page, very detailed immigration plan on my website. It's tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. Anyone can go look it up, read chapter and verse. That immigration plan was drafted hand in hand with Steve King and Jeff Sessions, two of the strongest advocates and fighters for securing the border we have in the entire country. And it lays out details in terms of how we secure the border.
Well, I'm not talking about the border, though. I'm talking about the people that are already in this country.
No, but it details an entire enforcement strategy. It's not just interior enforcement is a critical part of how you stop illegal immigration. So it's a comprehensive approach to stopping illegal immigration. It begins by building a wall that works. And, you know, as I joked in the last debate, maybe we'll make Donald Trump pay for it. After that, we triple the Border Patrol. We increase fourfold the fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft.
How do you get the people who are already in here out?
You put in place a strong E-Verify system. That means people cannot get employment without proving they're here illegally. You put in place a strong biometric exit-entry system for visas so that we know the instant someone overstays their visa. 40% of illegal immigration is visa overstays. And by the way, you can't, deportations are ineffective until you secure the border. Why? Because right now when we deport someone, often they come back in 2-3 days. It's like if a boat is sinking, you got to patch the hole first. If you just start bailing and you never fix the hole, it doesn't work.
I get that, but I still don't understand how the people who are living in the shadows, who are already operating under the radar, at least 11 million of them, will you have a force that goes door to door, rounds them up, and deports them?
We have an enforcement force. It's called Border Patrol, and it's called Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
They're at the border,
charged. No, ICE is not. ICE is not. Border Patrol is at the border. ICE is at the interior. They're both law enforcement. And listen, this shouldn't be an issue of debate. You know, I'm reminded of some years ago, Sonny Bono was asked, "What's your view on illegal immigration?" And he said, "Well, it's illegal, isn't it?" The question of what to do with people here illegally, the president, the Constitution answers this. The president says that the president must, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That is a responsibility. When the president takes his oath of office, that's a promise he's making to the American people. What Barack Obama says is he doesn't care what federal law says. He will not enforce it. If I'm elected president, I will follow the Constitution and I will enforce the law. Federal immigration law says if we apprehend an individual who is here illegally, they are to be deported.
If we apprehend them.
I will enforce the law.
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it seems like a fairly simple answer, yes or no. Will you have people going door to door, rounding people up?
Door to door, we don't have any system that knocks on the doors of every person in America. That is not actually how the American law enforcement system works. We also don't have people going door to door looking for murderers. We don't live in a police state. We do have law enforcement. How do we catch people? We catch them through things like E-Verify. We catch them through things like the criminal law enforcement system, where in 2013, do you know how many criminal illegal aliens the Obama administration released? It was over 104,000. 196 with homicide convictions, murderers. Roughly 400 with sexual assault convictions, rapists. those numbers should be zero. Over 16,000 with drunk driving convictions.
Right.
So we enforce the laws, but this notion, and listen, you know the media game you're playing. You want to conjure up.
No, I'm really just. Donald Trump has been very specific. Trump has been specific. There are 11 to 12 million at least undocumented immigrants, and he says he's going to have a force go and grab them and deport them. And
we have law enforcement authorities that enforce our laws. Your question, you keep saying, are they going to knock on every door in America? No, I don't intend to send jackboots to knock on your door and every door in America. That's not how we enforce the law for any crime.
Coming up next, Senator Cruz calls President Obama the most anti-gun president we've ever seen. The president pushing back, of course, on his critics.
It is so over the top and so overheated.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. President Obama says he will leave a seat empty at Tuesday night's State of the Union address to mark the victims of gun violence. This follows the president's executive actions to expand background checks. That move inspired Republican presidential candidate Ted Cruz to post this photoshopped image of Obama on his website, declaring, quote, "Obama wants your guns." I asked Cruz about this in our exclusive interview on board his bus tour of Iowa. Gun control, restrictions on gun ownership, gun grabbing, as you called it in an email, a lot of that in the news these days, and a lot of questions about background checks, who should be able to buy a gun, who should not. Do you think somebody who has been convicted of domestic abuse against a partner or girlfriend, boyfriend, should that person be legally allowed to buy a firearm? Because that's an issue that is debated a lot.
Well, it's existing law right now that if you have a domestic violence abuse, you're not eligible to buy a firearm, and that is existing law. And I mentioned my obligation as president is to enforce the law. And that's an obligation I take seriously. You know, it's interesting. There are a lot of times I'll get questions in town halls. I mean, you're on a bus right now. We're traveling through Iowa. We're doing 28 counties in 6 days. I'll get questions in town halls. Will you implement this policy that we really care about? And my answer over and over again. So, for example, I've had people say, will you end Obamacare on day one? And my answer has to be no. Now, listen, no one is more committed to ending Obamacare than I am. But a president doesn't have the constitutional authority to end it on day one because it's a statute passed into law by Congress. The only way to end it is to repeal that statute. So I will work with Congress and do everything humanly possible. We will repeal Obamacare. But unlike Obama, I don't intend as president to use his word, an emperor, simply decreeing the policy outcomes I like. I intend to follow the law. And, you know, there used to be that liberals believed in that. It's one of the amazing things under the Obama administration is where have all the liberals gone? You know, as we've seen the president disregarding the law, disregarding the Constitution. For example, a few years ago, President Obama lawlessly appointed commissioners to the National Labor Relations Board. He declared that the Senate was in recess when it wasn't.
Right.
And made recess appointments. Now, a few decades ago, there would have been old bulls in the Senate, the Ted Kennedys, the Mike Mansfield, the Robert Byrds, Democrats who would have stood up to a Democratic president and said, no, Mr. President, you don't have the authority to trample on the authority of the United States Senate. What is amazing is how servile the entire Democratic Party is right now, that I guess it's just the ends justify the means. And by the way, as you know, that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and 9-0, the Supreme Court said, no, of course, Obama doesn't have the authority to make appointments and declare the Senate in recess when it's not in recess.
Let's talk about that because the House and the Senate, Republican-led, just sent to President Obama a bill to overturn Obamacare. He vetoed it.
Yep.
Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, says we're going to have the vote to override the president's veto. We will probably not succeed, but this is how we're going to do it.
Yep.
What do you say to your Republican colleagues in Washington, in the Capitol, the cartel you refer to, who say this is how we should have been doing it, not your way, which was shutting down the government, their way, which is the constitutional way and the proper way? What's your response to them, the Mitch McConnells of the world?
Listen. The American people are so frustrated with Republican leadership who say at every turn, we have to fund all of Obama's agenda, all of Obama's priorities. You know, the Republican leadership just passed this massive omnibus bill,
right,
over $1 trillion, thousands of pages, negotiated in the dark of night. It funds 100% of Obama's priorities, funds all of Obamacare, all of executive amnesty. It funds all of Planned Parenthood. It funds this disastrous Iranian nuclear deal. It even funds President Obama's indefensible plan to bring Syrian refugees to America. Just this week, we saw 2 Iraqi refugees who have been arrested for being ISIS terrorists. And yet, Republican leadership decided to fund President Obama's plan to bring more.
Pelosi and Reid say the Republicans gave away the store because all they wanted was some deal that would help oil companies.
Look, you are exactly right, and Pelosi, and I'm going to say something that you will rarely hear me say. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid are exactly right. All of them said publicly, Republican leadership just funded our entire agenda. This is why, you know, when Washington is completely befuddled, why are conservatives uniting behind Ted? Why is there so much frustration with Washington? That sums it up. They're tired. We win elections. We keep winning elections. We won a tidal wave election in 2010. We won a tidal wave election in 2014. And Republican leadership tells the American people, I'm sorry, we can't stand and fight for anything. That's why people are fed up. But I'll tell you what, a year from now, if I'm elected president, Congress once again will pass a bill repealing Obamacare, and the difference is I will sign it into law.
Well, every Republican will sign it into law, whoever wins, if any of them make it to the White House.
But there is a difference. For it to happen, you've got to campaign on it and fight on it. You've got to come out of this next election with a mandate from the people. And I intend to make this next election a referendum on repealing Obamacare and on passing a simple flat tax where every American can fill out our taxes on a postcard and we can abolish the IRS.
But you know a lot of your colleagues in the Senate and the House in purple states or purple districts are worried about either you or Donald Trump being on top of the ticket. They worry that even if you win the White House, you're going to be a drag on them.
Well, I
in
will point
Ohio
out,
or New Hampshire or...
You're right that there are a lot of Washington political consultants that argue every election cycle the way for Republicans to win is run to the mushy middle. Run a candidate that's Democrat light. And every time we do it, we get clobbered. You know, this is no longer a theory, as they say in the tech world. This has been beta tested. The one thing that is abundantly clear, if we nominate another candidate in the mold of a Bob Dole or a John McCain or a Mitt Romney, and all 3 of those are good, honorable, decent men who love this country, but what they did didn't work. And by the way, in those purple states, all 3 of them got clobbered in the purple states, resulted in people losing other elections in the purple states. You want to know how we win 2016? I think 2016 is going to be an election like 1980, that we are going to win by painting in bold colors, not pale pastels. You know, Jake, you've been on the road with me. At almost every stop here in Iowa, people come up to me and say, I'm a Democrat. I've been a Democrat my whole life. This morning there was a man who said, I'm a Democrat, I'm a union member my entire life. I've changed over, I'm voting for you this time. At an event 2 stops ago, an African-American man came in and said, I was supporting Hillary Clinton when I walked in here. I'm with you now because we're abandoning our values, we're forgetting who we are. You know, it's worth remembering, in 50 years, there's only one Republican who has a group of Democrats named after it. Reagan Democrats. If the Washington theory were right, that you win crossover votes by running to the mushy middle, we'd have Gerald Ford Democrats or Bob Dole Democrats or John McCain Democrats or Mitt Romney Democrats. We don't have that because you got to give people a reason. In 1980, millions of FDR Democrats, millions of people whose parents and grandparents have been Democrats, crossed over to vote for Reagan because they said, those are my values. You're fighting for what I care about. And I'll tell you, as we see the Democratic Party get more and more radicalized, wage a war on the Second Amendment and our right to keep and bear arms, wage a war on religious liberty, wage a war on our basic freedoms, and then engage in this sort of bizarre, politically correct view of radical Islamic terrorism where they won't even say the words. It's like they're ostriches with their head in the sand.
I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
God bless.
Good luck. Have fun out here in Iowa.
We're having a tremendous time.